You're listening to the Startup Soirée podcast, episode number 5.
Startup.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Startup Soirée podcast. This is your host, Patrick Reif. Today, we're going to get to synchronize our live events with our podcast, and we have Todd Jennings from Panthera Tech on today. Todd is actually going to be the moderator for the second Startup Soirée event. The theme of that event is going to be growth and scaling. Todd has a pretty great story that is gonna really help to kind of support that idea and the things we want to talk about this Thursday. So we wanted to try and get him in the podcast seat a few days before the actual event, so everybody in our area that can attend our events will get a chance to listen to a little bit about what Todd has to say and maybe what he's going to be speaking on a little bit more in depth on Thursday night. So all of that on the table. And without further ado, Todd, welcome to the Startup Soirée podcast. Thanks for being our guest today.
Thanks, Patrick. Excited to be here and really looking forward to next week.
So if you don't mind, we don't really beat around the bush too much, and we just kind of get into the meat of it. So give everybody out there just kind of like a nice snapshot about Todd Jennings and Panthera Tech and, you know, what each of you do and a little, you know, background.
Sure. So I got my introduction to technology when I was in the Navy. In the mid-'80s, I was fortunate enough to work for a 4-star admiral, and one of my responsibilities was to track every airplane for every East Coast squadron in the Navy and provide mission status reports. And this was a laborious process, and being sort of a think outside the box, I thought, well, we can build a report and build some more efficient ways to do this. And that was my self-taught jump into technology and building actually an integration platform into the naval supply system. And I think that's where I got the technology bug. At that point, I have led several various roles in the corporate CIO seat, from nonprofit to publicly traded companies. And have seen various different sides of businesses and different verticals. At which point, after about 25 years of doing that, really wanted to leave the enterprise corporate world and start Panthera Technologies because I realized I brought both not only a deep level of business acumen to complement my technology skills. And that really, to me, provided a vision that I could help solve problems for all types of companies, of small to large size. And that gets down to where my passion comes from, is overlaying that technology to come up with solutions, and not for just the sake of technology. So when we started Panthera Technology in 2012 and hung the proverbial shingle out, we focus primarily on doing just that, professional services, both in the software development space and in the network infrastructure. As we started engaging the small SMB market, more and more business owners were really looking for a technology roadmap. They were looking for as I would say, a trusted advisor that would come in and help them determine, based on their business, how they could get the most value and how they could use technology to potentially separate themselves from their competition or even differentiate themselves from their competition. And that was where the excitement begins. And our 4 sort of core pillars at Panthera that we offer out to our clients start with the IT advisory services. We provide managed and cloud services, which in that mid-market space is an area that companies are finding cost benefit. And we'll provide everything from 24/7 help desk to server management to we have remote SOC. So we do security work and security monitoring for government agencies, compliance-driven organizations, and those that just have a need to ensure their information and data is protected. And we service clients currently from as small as 2 employees up to 10,000, primarily in the Mid-Atlantic. We're excited to announce officially this week we've opened our Atlanta office. We have 2 folks down there and beginning to hire more as we grow out in the South. And that's who we are at the core. And we look to really differentiate ourselves by the people and the talent that we bring to our clients.
Wow, I have so many directions I could go in, but I'm going to go all the way back to the thing that caught me immediately. I'm really curious to explore a little bit more, if you don't mind, about kind of whatever your relationship was like with that kind of admiral that you had worked for, and who kind of put you in charge of doing X, Y, and Z, and the potential that you saw for hybridizing what that process was. Obviously, there's like a little bit of a space there where he trusted you enough to change something. I'm just curious if you could just elaborate a little bit more about that.
Sure. I was again very fortunate. I graduated the top of my class in my A school. I was pulled aside and had this opportunity, and I was a little naive, being 18 years old, and my instructor said, "We've got an opportunity. I think you'd be a great candidate for." And I said, is that a good thing? And just didn't know what I was really, the opportunity that really was in front of me. I worked for Admiral Baggett, who was the Supreme Allied Commander for the U.S. Atlantic Fleet. So that is one position under the Chief of Naval Operations. And so his responsibility was the entire Atlantic Fleet. When I came on board, I was the only enlisted individual on staff. So the lowest ranking military person were captains, rear admirals, and admirals, obviously overseeing all the various fleet and operations of the Atlantic Fleet. And I came in as a junior guy again with this responsibility to pull together daily the information from all the squadrons. And that was a process of not only reporting, but actual face-to-face meetings and conversations, getting the updates, calling the squadrons, finding out mission capability. And I went to one of our captains and said, this is extremely time consuming. And I've always been sort of that think outside the box. When I do things and I do them multiple times, there's got to be a way to automate that. There's got to be a much more efficient way instead of this repetitive process. And that's where he opened the doors, enabled me. I started working with NAS Norfolk, the Naval Supply Side on the air station, to work with their technology folks. And again, at that point, I was pretty much self-taught. I had joined the military right out of high school, had always been one of those ones that, at the end of the workday, I was the one that was doing the research, tinkering, opening up the things and starting to write the code. And the captain went to the admiral with this idea after we had met with the technical team at the supply system and said, we've got a way we think we can bring visibility to our bottlenecks in the naval supply chain in a much more, I would say, proactive fashion. Instead of, I would call, in today's world, I would say they were rear view mirror reports. We were looking at data that was old, outdated, and by doing this, they were getting more accurate, up-to-date information, which obviously helps because the intent of this report was to determine, as a squadron was getting ready to go to sea on a carrier, they want to make sure all planes had all the necessary parts to be mission capable. And sometimes there are supplies and backlogs, and so they would take parts from other squadrons. So it was a way to increase efficiencies, visibility to all the squadrons. And I think as a young junior enlisted person, it did give a lot. He had a lot of trust in me. I mean, I think hopefully I had earned that. But I think after even doing that, it garnered even more respect in terms of the value that it brought and contributing to the team.
So I'm curious if you had an interest in the value of parsing data this way or that way prior to being enlisted in that specific job detail. I mean, not even necessarily when you got to the point of kind of innovating the way that you were tracking it, but just, could you follow your interest in the value of parsing data?
Sure.
This way or that way prior to being enlisted in that specific job detail. I mean, not even necessarily when you got to the point of kind of innovating the way that you were tracking it, but just, could you follow your interest in the Obviously at this point in your career, I think it's safe to say that you're interested in data and kind of all of its powers when you harness it in one direction or the other. Was that something that existed previous to that assignment, or does it kind of really spill out from that experience?
I think it spills out from that experience. I mean, I think it's always easier to look back in hindsight and sort of see the evolution. But, if I look back over the various corporate executive positions I've had and where CEOs looked and kind of where I was always, the comment I heard often from either the boards I sat on or from my executive teams were, a proactive approach. I was in one corporate organization, and the decisions we made as a leadership team were always reactive. And being a technologist and understanding that their data was out there, it wasn't in a place that it could be aggregated together, but I knew how to do that and said, we should be looking at things in real time or at least near real time in order to make more informed and proactive business decisions, not looking at financials 30 or 45 days later, and then trying to figure out why we didn't hit certain numbers or why sales have trickled off or, and it was always speculative. It was, I believe the data is the truth. And I think many organizations in today's environment with the proliferation of data don't know how to consume it, don't know how to manage it, and honestly don't understand the story that it tells. And I think with that story, there are huge opportunities for efficiencies, cost savings, even in telling the story about predicting the future and how organizations should be planning. And that's the beauty, I think, with the advancement of technology, unlike what was available in the late 80s, what we have today just gets you even more excited if and businesses understand how to harness that power.
Sure. So my next question is gonna kind of start to lean on this Thursday's startup soiree. So I was wondering if, just before I ask this question, if you wouldn't mind kind of recapping just the rough, I'm not asking you to get detailed, but the rough growth statistics of Panthera Tech, kind of like give me the age of the company and give me kind of like how you guys have leaped and bounded through your space. And then I'm going to kind of maybe ask some questions about growth and scaling.
Sure. Well, as doing Panthera, I'll say is a full-time job. I think we have all started as entrepreneurs with a part-time hobby and something that seems, not all-consuming while we try to figure out and moonlight and figure out how to leave the corporate safety net, especially as I've got a kid in college and one going to college. You kind of have to make that entrepreneur leap off the cliff, I would say. So I started in 2012, and Panthera since has doubled each year in terms of growth. This year we're excited to, and not even be at the end of Q1, and we're already at 40% of last year's end of year goal. So, I think it's indicative of some of those growth rates of a small company as we've began to establish our value proposition along with our referrals. One thing I think that is key in that number or in that comment is we don't have a sales force per se. We have led on relationships. We have led on doing what we say we're going to do and relying on our customers for referrals. And I think that's an important thing as you're starting out as a business. Understanding the relationship aspect, how important those relationships are, the partnerships, and going back to your existing customers and asking them, how are we doing? And if we're doing really good and you're happy, would you mind referring us to a couple of other, of your colleagues or peers within your industry?
Could you identify one thing that you feel like is, obviously everything is put together from a lot of small parts, but a lot of times, you can highlight that thing that is producing kind of the greatest value for you. Is there something that you feel like you can look back over your trajectory and say, this was the linchpin that fell into place that made everything else kind of really, really, excel?
Yeah. I mean, I can say hands down, our advisory piece is our secret sauce. While it's not so secret, I've always said with some of my CIO peers in the Mid Atlantic, there's I look at in the technology space, there are great technologists, but there's probably only a 5 to 10% of those technologists that have the acumen to marry up the technology with business and operations and finance. I mean, it's just that whole business side of being able to, walk into an organization, look at their manufacturing process, look at their cost of goods, look at the we're a publicly traded company, and look at the stock price and figure out what do we need to do in terms of investment to raise the stock 2 cents a share, and what does that mean for the manufacturing line in terms of outputting more widgets and decreasing cost and lowering our inventory levels. And I think that business acumen, as we started engaging clients, it was numerous clients that had commented, why didn't our previous provider have these conversations? Why weren't we told this? And we would comment back, I'm not really sure. I can only surmise that they're probably really good technologists, but they just didn't ask the right questions. And those questions weren't technical; they were business related. I recall a conversation with one of our healthcare clients, and the vendor was selling them about $250,000 of equipment. And when we said, I said, great, we can look at that, but tell me about your practice. Tell me what you're doing over the next 3 years. What do you have going on? I need to learn more about your business. An hour later, I looked at him and said, you don't need to spend any of that money. So that combination of advisory was a secret piece, and I think being very altruistic and transparent, I guess is the word I'm looking for, and being honest. We've always prided ourselves on the integrity of never going in to simply sell a client or offer a product or service to get the deal. It was always about being an advocate and adding value for that business. And because of that, almost every one of our managed services clients have grown exponentially because they've come back to us being, now that we had that trust, and said, hey, can you help us now with these other things? So what started as one opportunity has now flourished into multiple other opportunities. One client, we have 9 different projects going with them right now, and they have been a growing customer for the last year and a half. So I think that has been the trigger, and that's been for us the secret sauce, the advisory, and I think, again, being very transparent and trusting in your advice to your customer.
I have a few questions that I'm going to kind of push in a different direction that maybe will pertain a little bit more to you and kind of your personal habits that help to create the persona of you as an entrepreneur and what motivates you and that kind of stuff. So just right off the jump, is being a business owner, is creating a business or entrepreneurship something that you thought of for yourself from a young period of time, or was it something that was kind of a revelation that came to you over the course of just living and going through life?
After getting out of the military, got married and had my son, who at the time was 6 months old, and was dabbling sort of in the computer stuff, and .com was not really a buzzword, and this internet had not taken off. But I was doing it as a hobby, and I went to my wife. I said, I think I can do this as a business. But I didn't really have anyone to turn to. I never, to your point or your question, was never really a desire burning in my belly. I didn't have anyone in my family that really had ever started or owned a business. I relied on a few colleagues and friends, and I kind of jumped in the deep end and started that first company on a credit card. I can say made quite a few mistakes, learned a lot of lessons, grew it to about 10 employees, but then realized at that age and that point in my career, I loved technology more than I did running a business, and I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. So I got out of it, and I went into consulting, went to corporate. And now we've come full circle, and I think the lessons learned and the mistakes I made I think my corporate business experience in various verticals has made me more well-rounded, that now that passion, both for being hopefully a mentor for our employees and staff, providing a platform that's about paying it forward and creating a work environment where our folks come in and enjoy what they're doing, they're passionate about doing it, and helping customers. It's come full circle. So now I enjoy the aspects of running the organization, providing that knowledge and expertise, and team building. I've always been about building strong teams. I've gotten to where I'm at, not solely because of me, but it's really been around having incredible teams and good people that have, helped me get to where I'm at.
Do you have any personal routines that you do every day and that you consider to be kind of, part of your daily success routine? Or
Well, I am a triathlete, very competitive triathlete, and since having started that, I feel that daily exercise first thing in the morning is the best way for me to start the day. It's a great way, especially in technology when you're in front of the computer, to sort of decompress, get unhooked, and keeps the mind sharp. And it's also at a time, even though trying not to think about business, I find ideas pop in your head and there's a lot more creativity. So for me, that is the start of my day. And then I think it's important to have short goals and plans. So I live off of a task list every day, and I do have sort of that morning routine in certain hours of the day where I get that done, and that sets the tone, and ensures that I stay focused on track at the tasks at hand. I think as an entrepreneur, as a small business, it's hard to wear a lot of hats, and it's easily to get distracted, and you can lose focus of the things that are most important in growing and scaling your business.
So what time do you get up every day?
Typically between 3:45 and 4 a.m.
3:45 and 4 a.m. And so what's the first thing that you do?
It varies from day to day. I mean, one of the challenges as a triathlete is you have to train for 3 sports. So typical morning routine is some hour or so of cardio, and then typically an hour and a half in the pool. And then the evenings, it's typically weight training back to either a 6 or 8 mile run or a 40-mile bike, and then back in the pool for another hour and a half to get the laps in. So, doing the longer distance Ironman, it's really about endurance. So unfortunately, you've got to put the hours in to keep the endurance levels where they need to be.
So where do you swim?
At Brick Bodies in Timonium.
At Brick Bodies in Timonium. And did you previous to participating in these specific, types of races, did you have a background in swimming, or is that a skill that you developed to take part in the Ironmans?
Yeah, I had never swam probably a formal lap in my life. And when I did my first triathlon, I was probably close to drowning. I quickly learned, and I did finish that race, but I got home from Chicago and I got a coach over at McDonough and took some lessons, and that greatly helped. And since then, the ironic part in triathlons, it's the part of the race that most triathletes hate. I have since taken it up to be the most favorite part I'll enjoy, and I love to swim now. I think it's therapeutic for me. I put on my headphones, I can listen to books on tape or music, and I just can go for hour, 2 hours in the pool and just swim. So enjoy it.
You listen to music while you're swimming?
Yeah, it's technology, absolutely. And it's crystal clear. You listen to books on tape. They got headphones, you just pop them in and go.
My jaw is hanging wide open. So I have I am a pretty big dude, and I played, I was like the pretty average American kid. I played a lot of soccer and, some baseball and a little bit of lacrosse. And I pretty thoroughly sucked at all of them because I was just I grew so fast, and I just didn't grow into my body until I was in my late 20s. But I also throughout my entire life was a competitive swimmer, and
Oh, wow.
in that arena I was really, really good. And that was one space that I excelled at. So I'm always super intrigued when I get to talk to people who swim, because it's a really special, it's a really, like, you know, like any little community of a person that likes this or likes that.
Yeah.
It's just always fun when you run into people who know about swim meets and like writing your races on the back of your hand, and like that that whole like culture of competitive, you know, swimming. So
it's such great exercise. It's such a great body workout, and I think as you get older, it's it's low impact, so you don't have that kind of pounding that you do from running or other types of cardio. And again, I feel like it's so therapeutic being in the water. So it's something I hope to carry on long after I quit doing triathlons as I get older.
So what's the swim length in a triathlon?
2.4 miles.
2.4 miles. And how many triathlons will you compete in a given year?
Typically 12 to 15.
Wow. Todd, you're an incredible man. Seriously amazing.
And I do it all. The triathlon started out of the cause and the calling to help raise awareness for ALS. So, I think it's easy to find the time and the commitment when you can draw upon that passion and look at how you can help give something back to such an unfortunate, god awful disease.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey man, that pretty much brings us to it. I don't want to give away all the good stuff so people can skip out on this Thursday. Just before we break, Todd, do me a favor, let everybody know best place to reach out, what the URL is for your website, and then we'll go ahead and make sure to transcribe it and get it in the show notes. But yeah, just go ahead and tell everybody the best spots to reach out and get in touch with you or Panthera Tech.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. You can reach us online at Panthera Tech, TECH.com. That's PANTHERA Tech.com. Or you can find us on Twitter at Panthera Tech.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, you heard it here. That was Todd Jennings with Panthera Tech. He's going to be the moderator for the February Startup Soirée event. Our topic of conversation is going to be growth and scaling. So get your questions in. We're sending out lots of questionnaires this week. You should be getting them in your email box if you are a subscriber. If not, head over to www.startup-soiree.com and fill out the Get Invited form if you're a founder. We want you here contributing to the conversation. We're going to have some good beer from Jailbreak Brewing, and the caterer for this month's and every month's Startup Soirée in the Baltimore market is going to be Nutritious and Gundalo Juice. All of that, blah, blah, blah. Looking forward to it. Can't wait to see you guys. Todd, thank you so much for being a guest, and I'm really looking forward to this Thursday's event.
Thanks, Patrick. I look forward to seeing everybody out there.
All right, sir. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye.